Have you ever, like, worked for a boss who tried to cut corners to save a few pennies, only to end up creating just an absolute hilarious disaster?
Oh, definitely. It's the ultimate false economy.
Right, like the manager who decides that instead of paying for a real IT team,
Yeah.
they're just gonna, I don't know, run the company servers off some old laptop they found in a closet.
Yeah, and then the next thing you know, the entire client database is just wiped out by a forced Windows update.
Exactly.
It's wild, but there is this strange cognitive bias where people in power, they believe they can somehow outsmart the basic rules of
Oh,
reality.
for sure.
They think they're being incredibly shrewd, but they're actually just dismantling the very systems that keep them afloat.
And that exact dynamic is what we are getting into today. So I want to warmly welcome you to this special deep dive tailored specifically for the Simplified Awakening YouTube channel.
Glad to be here.
If you are joining us today, I humbly ask you to please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share your valuable comments down below. Your support is really what helps us spread these timeless teachings.
Absolutely. It makes a huge difference.
Because we have a genuinely incredible story for you today. Our mission for this deep dive is to narrate the full, highly entertaining story of the Tandulanali Jataka.
Yeah, and for anyone tracking the text, that is story number 5 from the classic Jataka collection.
Right.
And, you know, if you aren't familiar with the Jatakas, this isn't just a collection of simple little fables.
No, not at all.
These are foundational texts in Buddhist literature detailing the previous incarnations of the Buddha. But what makes them so enduring is that they operate almost like ancient psychological case studies.
Yeah, they're wrapped in folklore and humor, but they are fundamentally exploring human delusion, cognitive biases, and the law of karma.
Exactly, showing how specific character flaws sort of echo across multiple lifetimes.
Okay, so let's unpack this one, because the way this particular story exposes the absurdity of incompetence and greed is just masterful. I mean, it proves that trying to cheat reality always backfires.
It really does.
So we start with what is known as the story of the present. This is basically the framing narrative that sets up the ancient tale.
Right.
The scene is the Jetavana monastery, and we are introduced to this character named Dabba the Melian, and he held the position of the manciple.
Which is essentially a monastic quartermaster. Dabba was the guy responsible for distributing the daily food rations.
The rice checks, specifically.
Right, the rice checks to the Sangha, which is the community of Buddhist monks.
And I want to point out, this wasn't just throwing food at a crowd, right? There was a massive logistical challenge here.
Oh, absolutely. A major monastery like Jetavana housed hundreds, sometimes even thousands of monks.
Wow.
And there is a very strict, highly codified system of seniority.
Right, so the older monks get treated differently.
Exactly. Older, more senior monks received a different grade of food or seating than the young novices. So the manciple really needs a sharp memory, a strong sense of fairness, and a meticulous eye for detail.
Otherwise, you just get chaos and resentment.
Exactly. You have to keep the community running smoothly.
And Dabba was apparently excellent at this intricate job. But of course, no matter how perfect the system is, you always have that one person.
Always.
In this case, it was the elder Udai. And the text is pretty blunt about him. He was famously known among the monks as the Dullard.
Yeah, the moniker really speaks for itself there.
It really does.
Udai represents that classic organizational archetype, you know?
Yeah.
The individual who contributes the absolute least but demands the absolute most.
Oh, man, we all know someone like that.
Right. He was just a master of perceived grievances.
Yeah, so whenever Udai received a portion of rice that he, just arbitrarily decided was inferior, he wouldn't just quietly ask for a replacement.
No, of course not.
He would cause a massive scene in the check room. He would shout, like, "Is Dabba the only one who knows how to give out checks? Don't we know?"
Just endlessly disrupting the harmony of the Sangha.
Exactly.
Which brings up a really fascinating inflection point in group dynamics. The community is practicing patience, but eventually...
It was just snap.
Exactly. The sheer friction of dealing with constant, baseless complaints forces a drastic reaction.
Yeah. During one of Udai's theatrical tantrums, the other monks literally hand him the check basket and say, "Here, you give the checks out yourself today."
They promote him just to shut him up.
Which is such a recognizable thing.
But it is a terrible management strategy, by the way. Promoting the loudest complainer to a position of logistical authority is a guaranteed recipe for disaster.
Especially because Udai lacked, the two fundamental requirements for the job.
Right.
He had no ability to judge the quality of the rice, and he had zero comprehension of the complex seniority hierarchy of the monks.
So how does someone completely unqualified handle a complex system?
Well, he simplifies it to the point of absurdity.
Yeah.
Udai starts drawing these arbitrary marks on the ground and on the walls of the check room. He tells one grade of monks to stand by a line in the dirt, and another grade to stand by a mark on the wall.
Which, I mean, might work for a single day if nothing ever changes.
Right, but reality is dynamic. The very next day, the crowd sizes change.
Exactly.
Some senior monks are away, some new novices have arrived. The monks try to explain to Udai that his lines don't make sense anymore because the physical reality of the people in the room has shifted.
But Udai stubbornly refuses to adjust.
Yeah, his response to the chaos is just, "It's my mark, I trust."
It's my mark, I trust. I mean, that might be one of the most profound summaries of willful ignorance in all of ancient literature.
It's so good.
He has completely divorced his metric from reality. The actual living, breathing monks standing right in front of him are the reality, but he prefers the imaginary boundary he drew in the dirt.
Because it's easier.
Exactly. It required zero mental effort to maintain.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me, though. I initially thought this was like someone driving their car directly into a lake because the GPS told them to, just completely ignoring what they can see through their own windshield.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
But maybe it's even worse than that.
It is slightly worse, yeah. Because at least a GPS is based on a satellite mapping system that was accurate at some point.
Right.
Udai's system was entirely fabricated by his own mind. He created a false reality and then demanded the actual world conform to it.
And the actual world, unsurprisingly, refuses.
Right?
The young novices are so infuriated by his stubbornness that a massive uproar breaks out, and they literally pick him up and throw him out of the room.
Just physically eject him from the job.
Yeah. But this complete breakdown in the check room is what catches the Buddha's attention. He hears the commotion, asks his attendant Ananda what's happening, and Ananda explains that Udai has basically derailed the entire food distribution system.
And because the Buddha perceives the long arc of multiple lifetimes, he uses this seemingly trivial administrative failure to diagnose a much deeper spiritual sickness.
Right. He tells Ananda that this isn't the first time Udai's rigid stupidity has robbed people of their proper value.
Which provides the perfect causal bridge into the ancient story of the past.
Yes. So now we travel back thousands of years to the city of Benares during the reign of King Brahmadatta.
Right.
At this time, the Bodhisatta, who is the Buddha in a previous incarnation, was serving as the king's royal valuer.
And his job was to fairly appraise everything that came into the royal treasury, right? From exotic horses to precious jewels.
Exactly. And he was highly respected because he paid the merchants the proper fair market price.
But, an honest valuer is only an asset if you have an honest king.
Oh, yeah. That's the problem.
King Brahmadatta suffers from a fatal flaw that infects his entire worldview. He has a deep, paranoid greed.
Right.
He looks at the vast sums of money flowing out of his treasury to pay for these high-quality goods, and he just panics.
The text notes that this terrifying thought grips him. He thinks this valuer, with his style of valuing, will soon exhaust all the riches in my house. I must get another valuer.
It's so fascinating because he is receiving equal value in goods, right?
Yeah, he's getting prime horses and gold.
But he literally believes that paying a fair price is bankrupting him.
It's crazy.
That is the ultimate scarcity mindset. The king cannot comprehend that fair trade is what builds a prosperous, loyal kingdom. He only sees the immediate outflow of his own gold.
His greed just creates this massive blind spot.
Exactly. He wants someone who will artificially deflate prices so he can hoard wealth. He fundamentally misunderstands how economics works.
So the king decides to replace his highly skilled expert. He looks out his palace window into the courtyard, spots a guy walking by, and instantly decides to promote him.
Just some random guy.
Literally. The text describes this man as a stupid, greedy hind. Essentially an uneducated rustic peasant who clearly has zero background in valuation.
Right.
The king just makes him the new royal value right on the spot.
This totally mirrors the monks promoting Udai, but the motivation here is far more sinister.
Yeah.
The king elevates someone entirely unqualified, specifically because he believes he can control him. He senses a shared greed and a total lack of intellectual rigor.
It's incredible irony. The king thinks he's executing this brilliant, shrewd business maneuver by installing a yes man to protect his treasury.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a modern tech company trying to save money by firing its entire senior data analytics team.
And replacing them with a random algorithm.
Exactly, an algorithm that just arbitrarily assigns prices to their products to maximize short-term profit. You aren't saving on salaries, you are actively blinding your own business.
I would argue it's even more dangerous than a bad algorithm, actually.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, an algorithm, however flawed, applies a consistent mathematical rule.
That's true.
This new valuer operates on pure subjective whim. He's driven entirely by a desire to appease the authority figure who just elevated him.
Right, he's just guessing what the king wants to hear.
Exactly. He doesn't evaluate the craftsmanship, the market demand, or the utility of the items. He just invents a price out of thin air that he assumes will make the greedy king happy.
And because the new valuer has absolutely no anchor to reality, it is only a matter of time before someone exploits this broken system.
It's inevitable.
And that exploitation arises in the form of a horse dealer from the North Country. He brings a herd of 500 magnificent horses into Benares.
This is a massive, highly valuable asset.
Huge. So the dealer brings them to the king's new valuer for an appraisal.
And the fool looks at 500 strong, prime horses, and he appraises the entire herd at a single measure of rice.
Wait, just to be clear for everyone, we are talking about a cheap ration, right?
Yep.
A handful of grain for 500 horses.
Exactly. And because the king's word is law, the valuer orders that paltry ration of rice to be handed over to the dealer and directs all the horses to be seized and led off to the royal stables.
You can imagine the absolute shock and devastation of this horse dealer.
Oh, he must have been floored.
I mean, he has traveled hundreds of miles, bringing prime livestock, expecting a fair exchange to support his entire livelihood.
And instead, he is essentially robbed by the state.
Yeah, he is frantic. So he seeks out the former valuer, the Bodhisatta, and just pleads for advice on how to fix this.
Now, this is where the narrative shifts from a simple fable into a masterclass on psychology and strategy.
Oh, I love this part.
Pay close attention to the advice the Bodhisatta gives. He tells the dealer to go back, offer a bribe to the foolish valuer to get him in a good mood, and then challenge him in the royal court in front of the king.
But the challenge is highly specific, isn't it?
Very. He tells the dealer to accept that the horses are worth a single measure of rice, but to ask the valuer what that measure of rice itself is worth.
I have to admit, when I first read this, I was completely confused.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, if I am the horse dealer, my very first instinct is to bring in other horse experts. I want to bring in breeders and merchants to objectively prove my animals are worth thousands of gold pieces.
Sure, that makes logical sense.
So why on earth does the Bodhisatta tell him to accept that terrible, insulting price?
Because you cannot logic someone out of a position that they didn't logic themselves into.
Oh, wow. So what does this actually mean for the dealer's strategy?
It means that arguing the value of the horses would be entirely useless. The fool doesn't understand horses, and more importantly, he doesn't care.
Right.
If you present facts, data, or expert testimony to someone deeply entrenched in their own delusion, especially a delusion rewarded by their boss, they will just dig their heels in further. It triggers confirmation bias.
Okay, so if fighting the false premise doesn't work, what is the Bodhisatta actually doing here?
He is employing a technique known in philosophy as Reductio ad Absurdum. You don't fight the flawed logic, you agree with it.
I see.
You take the opponent's absurd premise and you force them to apply it to something they actually care about, pushing the logic until it completely collapses under its own weight.
That's brilliant.
The Bodhisatta knows the fool has no internal compass for value. So he sets a trap where the fool will inevitably swing from artificially deflating a price to artificially inflating one.
It is psychological judo. You use their own unmoored momentum to just flip them over.
Exactly.
So the dealer follows this strategy flawlessly. He bribes the fool, gets him feeling confident, and says, I accept your valuation.
Right.
Then the entire court convenes at the royal palace. You have the dealer, the fool, the king, and all the king's top ministers. And the Bodhisatta also attends to watch the trap spring.
The tension in the room must have been palpable. The king is sitting there, utterly oblivious, thinking he has just pulled off the greatest trade in the history of his kingdom.
So good. The dealer respectfully approaches the throne and says, Sire, I do not dispute that the price of my 500 horses is a single handful of grain. But I would ask your majesty to question your valuer as to the true value of that specific measure of rice.
Which sounds so innovative.
It does. And the king, blinded by his own greed and thinking this is a mere formality, turns to his valuer and says, Valuer, what are 500 horses worth?
Right.
And the fool proudly puffs out his chest and says, A measure of rice, sire.
The trap is set. The premise is officially on the record in front of the entire government.
Then the king asks the fatal follow-up question. Very good, my friend. If 500 horses are worth one measure of rice, what is that measure of rice worth?
Here comes.
And the fool, completely unaware of how geography, economics, or basic reality functions, proudly declares that a measure of rice is worth all Benares and its suburbs.
Oh, man. We really need to pause and look at the sheer scale of the cognitive dissonance here.
It's massive.
The text provides specific measurements to highlight the absurdity. The walls of Benares alone were 12 leagues around, and the city with its sprawling suburbs was 300 leagues in circumference.
And a league is roughly 3 miles. So we're talking about an empire that is 900 miles around.
It is a massive, wealthy, incredibly powerful kingdom. And the fool has just appraised this entire vast civilization, including the ground the king is sitting on, at a single cheap bowl of rice.
Just incredible.
Because he was bribed by the dealer to feel important, and because he possesses zero concept of intrinsic value, his valuation just wildly pendulum swings from one ridiculous extreme to the other.
Wait, but if the king was so deeply greedy, why wouldn't his greed make him instantly realize he was being insulted? Wouldn't he immediately execute the guy for pricing his kingdom at pennies?
That is the tragic irony of the scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
The king's greed made him so hyper-focused on saving money on the horses that he completely lost sight of the macro picture. Greed narrows your vision.
Oh, wow.
He couldn't see the insult until the fool actually verbalized it in front of the court.
And the reaction from the court is immediate. The tension breaks, and all the king's ministers start clapping their hands and roaring with laughter.
They openly mock the king's hiring decision right to his face.
They really do. They say, we used to think that the earth and the realm were beyond price, but now we learn that the kingdom of Benares, together with its king, is only worth a single measure of rice.
Ouch.
What talents the valuer has. How has he retained his post so long? But truly, the valuer suits our king admirably.
The valuer suits our king admirably. I mean, that is a devastating critique from his own staff.
It really is.
The ministers are no longer holding back. They are pointing out that the fool's sheer incompetence is a direct, perfect reflection of the king's own corruption.
Yeah.
The king actively sought out ignorance to serve his greed, and he got exactly the humiliation he paid for.
And amidst this roaring laughter, the Bodhisatta steps forward. He delivers the summarizing stanza of the story, which really drives the philosophical point home.
Right.
He says, "Dost ask how much a peck of rice is worth? Why, all Benares, both within and out.
Yeah.
Yet, strange to tell, 500 horses, too, are worth precisely this same peck of rice."
That poetic summary is brilliant because it exposes the complete logical collapse of the king's entire worldview.
Absolutely.
It highlights the relativity of value when it becomes unmoored from truth. If everything is arbitrary, then nothing has worth.
So the king is put to open inescapable shame. His false economy has made him the laughingstock of his own empire.
Yep.
The realization finally hits him, so he sends the foolish valuer packing in disgrace and immediately restores the Bodhisatta to his rightful post.
Thankfully.
Right. And then, seamlessly shifting back to the present day at the monastery, the Buddha reveals how the threads of karma connect these events.
It all comes together.
It does. Udai the Dullard, the monk who was stubbornly trusting his arbitrary marks in the dirt, was that foolish valuer in his past life.
And the Buddha himself was the wise valuer.
Right.
This connection is really why the Jatakas are so compelling. The Buddha is illustrating that the psychological mechanism is identical across lifetimes.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, Udai trusting his arbitrary mark on the wall is the exact same willful blindness as the fool pricing an empire at a handful of grain.
Ah, I see.
In both scenarios, an unqualified individual is desperately trying to force a complex, dynamic reality to conform to a simplistic, ignorant rule.
Yes.
And in both scenarios, because reality will not be cheated, it ends in uproar and a very public ejection.
So after traveling from a chaotic monastery to an ancient royal court, what is the core insight for you, the listener, from this deep dive?
The fundamental lesson here is about the bedrock nature of true value. True value cannot be dictated by a scarcity mindset, by greed, or by arbitrary marks on a wall.
It requires engagement with the real world.
Exactly. Value requires observation, understanding, and an engagement with reality. When leadership, whether that's a king in ancient Benares, a manager in a modern corporation, or even ourselves in our own personal lives, actively chooses ignorance or denial to save a quick buck or assert control, the damage goes far beyond a single bad deal.
It infects everything.
You don't just hurt others. You fundamentally devalue your own entire enterprise. The king thought he was outsmarting the market to gain some horses, but he ended up inadvertently pricing his own legacy and kingdom at a bowl of rice.
You try to cheat the system by ignoring the rules of reality, and you end up bankrupting yourself, either financially, organizationally, or morally.
Well said. Which leads to a crucial question I'd love for you to ponder today. We all face systems or individuals that use flawed metrics.
Oh, definitely.
If someone were to value your life's work, your greatest talents, or your deepest passions today, using the greedy king's logic, what arbitrary measure of rice would they try to assign you?
That's a great question.
And more importantly, using the Socratic wisdom of the Bodhisatta, how could you expose the absurdity of their metric to the world without getting dragged into a useless argument?
That is a phenomenal question. How do you flip the script on someone who refuses to see your true worth? Remember Udai and his lines in the dirt. Do not let someone else's fabricated, broken reality dictate the direction or the value of your life. We want to thank you so much for joining us on this session for the Simplified Awakening channel. Please take a moment right now to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment down below with your thoughts on that provocative question.
We really want to hear from you.
Yeah. How do you handle it when someone tries to assign a cheap ration to your true value? We would absolutely love to read your answers and engage with your insights. And most importantly, stay hooked, because the next incredible story from the Jatakas is coming up soon, and you will not want to miss it.